A few years ago, a doctor walked into a hospital room and looked a former golf prodigy in the eyes. The diagnosis wasn't a torn Achilles or a bad shoulder. The doctor told him his organs were shutting down. He had 14 days left on Earth if he didn't drastically change his life. He wasn't fighting for a trophy. He was fighting for his life. But this weekend in Australia, Anthony Kim didn't just prove he was still alive. He proved he is still lethal. In a final round that will be talked about for the next 50 years, the man who vanished for over a decade just hunted down Jon Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau to win LIV Adelaide. 5,796 days since his last victory. From a medical death sentence to holding the trophy with his daughter. Welcome to Golf Backstage. Let's break down the greatest comeback in the history of sports. February 15th, 2026, Adelaide, Australia. A man who wasn't supposed to be alive stood over a crucial birdie putt on the 17th hole. The stadium galleries around him were screaming, but inside his own mind, it was dead silent. His hands were shaking. If you looked closely at the high-definition broadcast footage, you could see the undeniable tremor in his fingers as he gripped the putter. But that physical reaction didn't come from the standard pressure of the moment. It didn't come from the fear of losing a multi-million-dollar golf tournament. They were shaking from something much deeper. They were shaking from the sheer, unimaginable weight of survival. Just 3 years earlier, doctors had pulled his wife aside in a sterile, fluorescent-lit hospital hallway and whispered words that no family should ever have to hear. 2 weeks, maybe less. His body was completely shutting down. The damage from years of abuse was done. Standing on a sun-drenched green in South Australia, 5 shots clear of Jon Rahm, 8 shots better than Bryson DeChambeau. The massive crowd of 115,000 people didn't quite know whether to roar in triumph or cry in disbelief. Because what they were watching wasn't just a golf tournament. It wasn't just a weekend sporting event. This was a literal resurrection. Anthony Kim hadn't won a professional golf tournament in 16 years. 16 years. To put that into perspective, entirely new generations of elite athletes are drafted, peak, and retire in that time frame. But Anthony Kim wasn't simply retired. He was gone. He was a ghost story. He was a myth whispered about on golf forums and internet threads. People claimed they saw him at random gas stations. Others swore he was living in complete seclusion, collecting a massive insurance payout, done with the game forever. The truth was so much darker and more terrifying than anyone could have ever imagined. And what he did on that Sunday in Adelaide didn't just shock the sports world. It fundamentally shattered everything we thought we knew about comebacks, about redemption, and about the absolute limits of the human spirit. But what happened next would shock everyone, because the mainstream media is ignoring the darkest parts of this story. Before we go any further, I need to say something. If you truly love this game, if sports mean more to you than just scorecards and highlight reels, if you believe in stories that remind us why human resilience actually matters, then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Become part of this community. Because we don't just talk about golf scores here. We talk about the raw reality of life. And trust me, you are going to want to be here for what we are about to uncover. Let me take you back. Not to 2026. Not even to 2024, when Anthony Kim first shocks the world by returning to LIV Golf. Let's go all the way back to 2008. If you weren't around golf back then, you need to understand exactly who Anthony Kim was. He was 23 years old, and he was an absolute killer on the course. He was the undisputed hero of the Ryder Cup, famously taking down Sergio Garcia. He had 3 PGA Tour victories before most guys even figured out how to keep their tour cards. He wore oversized bedazzled AK belt buckles. He rocked a buzz cut. He played professional golf like he was in a back alley street fight. He was fearless, reckless, and entirely unforgettable. The media dubbed him the next big thing. They called him the heir apparent to Tiger Woods. He wasn't just a talented ball striker. He was pure, unadulterated electricity. When Anthony Kim walked onto a tee box, the energy of the entire golf course shifted. He played with a swagger that you simply could not teach. But behind the flashy belt buckles and the $1 million smile, a quiet disaster was brewing. By 2012, the injuries started piling up. An Achilles tendon tear, thumb surgery, and then, without a press conference, without a farewell tour, he just vanished. For over a decade, the most prominent rumor surrounding his disappearance was the legend of the golden handcuffs. Whispers circulated throughout the industry that Kim had taken out a massive tax-free insurance policy against a career-ending injury. The rumored payout was estimated at around $10 million, but there was a massive catch. If he ever took a single swing in a professional golf tournament again, the policy would be immediately voided, and he would have to pay it all back. People assumed he simply did the math, took the cash, and walked away to live a life of quiet luxury in Dallas. It made sense on paper, but that wasn't the whole story. The truth included the insurance policy, but it was anchored by something far worse. And this is the part that the polished golf broadcasts don't want to talk about, because it makes people uncomfortable. Anthony Kim wasn't just hiding from the media to protect his bank account. He was battling severe, life-threatening demons. He was caught in a vicious cycle of numbing his physical and emotional pain. He recently admitted publicly that he spent nearly 2 decades battling extreme darkness. He revealed that he woke up almost every single day, contemplating if he should just off himself and end the pain. Even when he was at the absolute peak of his fame, smiling for the cameras and hoisting trophies, he was completely hollow inside. He became a master of illusion. He was so good at hiding his reality that he completely lost track of who he was as a human being. During those dark years in isolation, he revealed that he scarcely left his house. He lived in a bizarre state of seclusion, kept company only by 2 pet monkeys and 6 dogs. He admitted he was surrounded by scam artists and people who took advantage of him when he was young and vulnerable. But the most horrifying reality was his time on the PGA Tour. He confessed that during major championships, the most prestigious, heavily scrutinized events in the sport, he was making stops in the porta potties every few holes just to cope. He was relying on heavy chemical intervention just to get his nervous system through a round of golf. That wasn't recreational. That was pure survival. The grueling structure of professional golf didn't create his internal demons, but it provided the perfect, isolating environment for them to thrive. The constant travel, the lonely hotel rooms, the unrelenting expectations. It was a recipe for total destruction. By 2022, his body finally said enough. He ended up in the emergency room. For 6 days, he hovered on the edge of the abyss. His wife, Emily, and his closest friends had to physically assist him just to walk into a rehabilitation center. His organs were shutting down. The doctors delivered the grim timeline to his family. 2 weeks left. Imagine that reality. You are in your 30s. You have a beautiful wife and a young daughter. You were once standing on top of the sporting world. And now a medical professional is looking you in the eye and telling you that you probably won't be here next month. What do you do with that information? Do you just close your eyes and let the darkness win? Do you surrender? And if you choose to fight, what exactly are you fighting for when your mind has been your own worst enemy for 20 years? But Anthony Kim didn't just survive his stint in rehab. He climbed out of the grave and decided to do something that the entire world told him was fundamentally impossible. But a comeback like this doesn't happen in a vacuum. It required a catalyst. Enter Greg Norman. The LIV Golf CEO saw something in Kim that the rest of the golf world had discarded. The PGA Tour had completely moved on, but Norman picked up the phone. Sources revealed that Norman and LIV offered Kim a deal that would cover his $10 million insurance policy, essentially buying his freedom to play the game again. But it wasn't just about the money. Norman sat down with Kim and asked him point blank if he still had the fire. Norman later said, "I saw it in his eyes. He had so much talent, but it was buried by poor decisions. He wanted to change with a force for good." Norman didn't just offer him a contract, he offered him a lifeline when the rest of the establishment viewed him as a liability. But to understand the miracle of 2026, you first need to understand the absolute humiliation of 2024. When Kim first accepted that wildcard spot to return to professional golf, the sports media ecosystem erupted in laughter. They called it a nostalgia grab by a league looking for cheap headlines. The traditional golf analysts scoffed. "He's completely washed," they said. And for a year and a half, those critics looked entirely correct. When Kim returned to the course, he looked like a ghost trying to remember how to haunt a house. In his first tournament back in Jeddah, he finished dead last by 11 shots. He shot rounds in the mid to high 70s. He looked entirely lost. The flashes of his own talent were buried under a mountain of competitive rust and visible anxiety. Every time he posted a terrible score, the media used it as ammunition. Throughout 2024 and 2025, Anthony Kim didn't earn a single point in the LIV Golf individual standings. Not one. It was a brutal, public humbling. He went from being a sporting myth to a weekly punchline. And at the end of the 2025 season, the inevitable happened. He was relegated, dropped from the league, finished. Think about the psychological toll of that moment. You survive the darkest period of your life. You void your massive insurance policy and put yourself back in the public eye, only to fail spectacularly in front of millions of people. Most human beings would have packed up their clubs and never looked at a golf course again. But his story was far from over. What the public couldn't see was the incredible physical toll his body had taken. This wasn't just a guy shaking off a little rust. Kim revealed that during his absence, he underwent multiple surgeries to repair his Achilles, a hand, and a shoulder. But the most significant procedure was a spinal fusion, the exact same grueling surgery Tiger Woods had to undergo. He was stepping onto the tee box with metal holding his spine together. Yet remarkably, his swing remained instantly recognizable. He still choked down on the grip of his driver, just like he did in 2008. He even joked in interviews, "I think I'm actually hitting the ball farther now than when I left the game. So maybe some of this metal is helping." He was rebuilding a bionic swing through pure grit. Enter January 2026, the LIV Golf Promotions event. This is LIV's version of qualifying school. It is an absolute dogfight. It is where desperate professionals, young grinders, and forgotten veterans battle for just 3 available roster spots for the upcoming season. It is not glamorous. It is survival golf. Anthony Kim showed up. The former golden boy of the PGA Tour was now fighting in the trenches just to keep a job. In the early rounds, he barely survived. He made the cut to the weekend on the exact number. One single stroke kept his career alive. And then, over that weekend, the rust finally cracked off the armor. Something clicked. He fired a 66, followed by a 69. He grabbed the third and final spot to regain his LIV card. The golf world offered a polite golf clap, but nobody thought he was actually going to win a premier event against the heavyweights of the sport. And he almost didn't even make it to the tournament that changed his life. In the week leading up to LIV Golf Adelaide, everything almost fell apart. First, he needed a team. Dustin Johnson threw him a massive lifeline, signing Kim to his 4 aces squad, after Patrick Reed left the league. It was a show of faith from a fellow champion. But then, disaster almost struck. Kim forgot to fill out his visa documents for Australia. He was hours away from being denied entry into the country entirely. It was a chaotic, stressful build-up to an event that he was starting at the very bottom of the odds sheet. He eventually got the paperwork sorted, boarded the flight, and landed in South Australia with absolutely zero expectations from the outside world. February 2026. The Grange Golf Club is home to the most raucous, chaotic, and electrifying atmosphere in all of professional golf. Over 115,000 fans pack the grounds. The infamous watering hole is a stadium filled with screaming fans, thumping music, and relentless pressure. It is the exact kind of high-stimulation environment that would normally send a recovering nervous system into absolute overdrive. Round 1, Round 2, Round 3. Kim was playing incredibly solid golf. He wasn't blowing the doors off the place, but he was executing. After 54 holes of the extended event, he found himself sitting in third place. He was 5 shots behind the co-leaders, Jon Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau. Now, in the world of professional golf, being 5 shots back of 2 major champions in their absolute prime is a death sentence. 5 shots might as well be 50. Rahm is a machine. DeChambeau is a scientist with unimaginable power. You don't just casually chase down the 2 most dominant players in the world on a Sunday. But Sunday in Adelaide is when Anthony Kim taught the world a brand new lesson about the nature of pressure. We talk about pressure in sports all the time. We say a player is feeling the pressure to make a cut or secure a contract. But Anthony Kim was operating on an entirely different psychological baseline. This is the concept of reference point asymmetry. For Jon Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau, the worst-case scenario on that Sunday was finishing second or third. They would still make millions. Their pressure was athletic. It was tied to their egos and their legacies. For Anthony Kim, the worst-case scenario used to be not waking up in the morning. His baseline for panic had been recalibrated in an emergency room. When you have looked death in the face, a slippery, downhill 10-foot putt to save par doesn't register as a threat to your nervous system. A missed fairway doesn't send you into a spiral. You have already survived the darkest nightmare a human mind can conjure. Playing a game on freshly cut grass in the Australian sunshine is a blessing, not a burden. Operating with that supreme, unshakable perspective, Anthony Kim went out on Sunday and shot a flawless, bogey-free 63.